There are moments in life that feel like a detour, a delay, a disaster. Moments that grip your heart and squeeze so tight, you wonder if you'll ever breathe the same again. You ask why. You scream into the silence. You reach for answers in a storm that gives you none. But what if I told you? You're about to see why it had to happen. That thing you buried under silence and strength. That failure you wear like armor. That heartbreak you tried to forget. It wasn't a punishment, it was a preparation. You see, destiny doesn't knock with soft hands. It crashes in like a wildfire, burning down who you were, to reveal who you've always been. We glorify the mountaintop, but forget the valley is where the roots grow deep, where you met the version of you that couldn't be faked, where you bled, cried, and kept walking anyway. You didn't lose your way. You were being carved like Michelangelo's David, who was once just a block of rejected marble. Carved like steel, forged in flame, bent and beaten until it became unbreakable. Carved like every leader in history who had to walk through fire before they held the crown. Abraham Lincoln failed in business, lost elections, buried children, battled depression, yet stood tall when the Union was torn. Thomas Edison told he was too stupid to learn anything, fired from multiple jobs, but still lit up the world. Walt Disney fired for lack of imagination, bankrupt before Mickey ever danced across a screen. You think your setbacks mean the story is over, but legends are born in rejection. Greatness is not granted, it is revealed through the breaking. Because sometimes the fall is the blessing. You had to lose them so you could find you. You had to be overlooked so you could learn how to see yourself. You had to be stretched so you'd never shrink again. This is not about revenge. This is about resurrection. The version of you who walked into the storm will not be the same one who walks out of it. That version was small enough to fit inside the opinions of others. This version is too expansive to be contained. Because now you know, pain isn't the enemy, comfort is. Comfort tells you to settle. Pain tells you to rise. Comfort whispers, stay safe. Pain screams, break free. And once you've tasted that transformation, nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever satisfy you like truth. You are not fragile. You are not forgotten. You are not a fluke. You were chosen to rise through this. Not around it, not under it, not over it, but through it. And the reason it felt like it was tearing you apart is because it was tearing away everything you never needed. Mindsets that were inherited, not chosen. Patterns that were repeated, not designed. Limits that were learned, not real. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. Positioned for a mindset so sharp, it cuts through excuses like a sword. You start to think different, walk different, move with a clarity that no longer asks for permission, because once your mind has expanded, it cannot shrink, and once you've been broken and rebuilt, no counterfeit identity can survive in your presence. This is where it begins with belief, not the kind that's loud, not the kind that's flashy, but the kind that whispers to you in the dark. I was made for more than this, and you were, but more doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who wake up. Wake up from the lie that says your past disqualifies you. Wake up from the myth that says your pain makes you weak. Wake up from the illusion that purpose is handed out like charity. Purpose is forged, like gold pulled from the belly of the earth, like iron shaped on the anvil, like diamonds crushed under pressure. That's who you are, you just forgot, because you were distracted by disappointment. But disappointment is not the end, it is the invitation. The invitation to stop chasing applause and start chasing alignment. Because the truth is, the reason it broke you is because it was beneath you. You had outgrown it, but didn't realize it yet. So life had to take it away, not to hurt you, but to wake you, because sometimes comfort won't let go of you until chaos comes and breaks the grip. You had to be shaken, you had to watch it fall apart, not because you were weak, but because your spirit was too powerful to live in a cage. Every closed door, every betrayal, every detour that felt like death. Was life rerouting you to your original design? You didn't just survive it, you transcended it. You walked out of a chapter that tried to convince you it was the whole book, and now clarity, not the kind that waits for permission. Not the kind that checks for approval, but the kind that stands in front of the mirror and says, I know who I am now. This is the moment where vision returns, where your sight moves beyond what's in front of you, and starts seeing through what's inside you. Not fantasy, not delusion, but divine remembering. That little girl who used to dream before they told her to shrink. That little boy who believed he could move mountains before someone handed him a shovel and told him to dig holes. You haven't lost your power, you just forgot where you buried it. But now your soul is rising again, and this time it's coming with fire. Your vision is no longer filtered through fear. It's coming from alignment. You don't want everything, you just want what's yours, and you're done apologizing for it. Because when purpose touches your bones, the noise of the world starts sounding like static. The distractions fade. The comparisons die, and what's left is calling not comfort, not convenience, calling the kind that doesn't ask if you're ready, it demands you rise. That's why purpose doesn't knock softly. It breaks things. It breaks cycles. It breaks denial. It breaks the false self that kept pretending to be small. And when you start answering that call, really answering, you realize this life was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be profound. It was meant to shake you, strip you, stretch you until every drop of potential in your blood began to boil. That's why discipline is not a punishment, it's a privilege. It's not just doing the hard things. It's becoming the kind of person who no longer needs the easy ones. Discipline isn't about control, it's about choice. The choice to show up even when your feelings don't. The choice to speak life even when your heart's been crushed. The choice to move when everything in you wants to sit still. Discipline is when your future self starts driving the car and your old excuses get kicked out of the front seat. You want transformation, it's not in the hype, it's in the habits. It's in the silence at 5 a.m. when no one's clapping but you still get up. It's in the moment you say no to temporary pleasure for eternal purpose. It's in the breaking again and again until you become someone the old version of you wouldn't even recognize. Let the world sleep on you. Let them misunderstand your quiet season, because while they're watching for a performance, you're building a foundation. You're stacking bricks of intention. You're pouring concrete in your character. You're laying steel across your mindset, and when the storm comes, and it will, you won't be shaken, not because the storm is weak, but because you've become the storm. They won't understand your hunger. They won't get why you said no to comfort, why you disappeared for a season, why you chose growth over gossip. But let them wonder. You're not in it for the spotlight, you're in it for the substance, and that's why this had to happen. So you'd stop waiting for the world to validate you, and start walking like you were born with value. Because you were created with intention. You are wrapped in assignment. You carry weight that no title can hold, no applause can match, and the things that tried to break you, they didn't win. They woke you up to the truth you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break through. You don't fit the mold because you were born to remake it. You were never supposed to inherit the pain of generations and just pass it on. You were the interruption. You were the rebellion wrapped in grace. You were the answered prayer disguised as a problem. This is the chapter where you stop running. Stop running from the mirror. Stop running from the memory. Stop running from the mission, because clarity comes when you stop asking, why did it happen to me? And start declaring it happened for me. That shift, that sacred shift, is where power is born. You stop seeing the wound as the end, and you start seeing it as the womb where your true self was formed, because you didn't just survive the fire, you absorbed it, you became it. You no longer need people to understand what you've walked through, because you're not here to be understood, you're here to ignite. That's what happens when you realize it had to happen. Not one moment wasted, not one tear meaningless, not one loss in vain. It all built you. It all shaped the steel in your soul, and now you move differently. Not with arrogance, but with authority. Not because life got easier, but because you got sharper. You walk into rooms without shrinking. You speak truth without trembling. You trust yourself without waiting for someone else to sign your greatness. This is vision, not dreams vision. Dreams are what you see when your eyes are closed. Vision is what you do when your eyes are wide open, and the world is trying to distract you, but you keep building anyway. You stopped waiting for perfect timing. You realized the clock was always ticking, and it was never too late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not buried. You are becoming, and becoming is brutal before it is beautiful. Ask any tree what it costs to rise from seed to sky. Ask any phoenix what the flames felt like. Ask any legend how many nights they almost quit, and they'll tell you the moment they thought they were breaking was the moment they were being reborn. So don't curse the crushing. Don't despise the detour. This is where you pick up the pen. This is where you rewrite the narrative, not as a victim, but as a voice that declares, I went through hell and I came back holding fire. Fire to light the way for others. Fire to burn away every lie that said you weren't enough. Fire to forge the path your younger self prayed someone would walk. That's the purpose of pain, to make it mean something, to take what was meant to break you and use it to build others. This is your gift now, not the perfection, the process. Because people don't follow the flawless, they follow the real. And there's nothing more real than a soul that's been tested and still chose truth. Still chose growth, still chose to rise when it would have been easier to run. You could have quit, but you didn't. You could have shut down, but you opened up. You could have stayed small, but you expanded. That's the power of purpose. It doesn't let you go back to who you were, and even when you feel tired, even when the road feels long, there is a reason you keep rising, because purpose never sleeps. It won't let you settle. It won't let you numb. It won't let you trade power for popularity. You're building something that doesn't fit in this world's mold. That's why the mold had to break. That's why the betrayal had to come. That's why the silence had to stretch so long you thought heaven forgot your name. But heaven didn't forget. Heaven was forming you in the hidden place, in the silence, in the middle of the unanswered prayers and invisible progress. Because purpose doesn't grow in the spotlight. It grows in the soil, and now that the seed has cracked open, you are unstoppable. And now that the seed has cracked open, you are unstoppable. Not because everything around you is easy, but because everything within you is eternal. You've been tested in silence. You've been shaped by storms no one saw. You've been carried by grace when strength gave out. And still you rise. You rise when your knees shake. You rise when the room is full of doubters. You rise when your heart is heavy and your hands are empty, because your soul remembers what your flesh sometimes forgets. You were made for resilience. The world will try to define you by what you lost, but God defines you by what you refuse to give up on. Resilience isn't loud. It's not the roar, it's the refusal to go quiet. It's the whisper in your spirit that says, I will not die here. You bend, but you don't break. You weep, but you still war. You stagger, but you keep showing up again and again and again. This is what they don't see in highlight reels. This is what doesn't get applause but builds anointing. It's not the moments you won. It's the moments you almost quit, but kept going anyway, and that's why life didn't break you, it built you. Because every collapse taught you how to rebuild faster. Every ending trained you how to begin again with less. Every time someone walked away, you learned to walk taller, not because they left, but because you learned. This is adaptability, the ability to evolve, to pivot, to transform right in the middle of the storm. You no longer wait for the world to be perfect to start moving. You shift, you create in chaos, you dream in droughts, you sow in seasons where others only see scarcity. You stopped needing green lights. You became the engine, and when life says no, you say, I'll make a way. That's what your ancestors did. That's what warriors do. They build the bridge while they walk across it. And that, right there, that's power. That's legacy, but even now, even as you build, even as you climb, you carry something deeper than ambition. You carry gratitude, because somewhere in your soul you know, it didn't have to be this way. You didn't have to survive. You didn't have to find the strength. You could have folded, faded, disappeared, but you're still here, not perfect, not untouched, but present, still fighting, still growing. Still loving with a heart that has every reason to be closed but stays open. That's the kind of gratitude that changes the atmosphere. It's not fake smiles. It's sacred reverence. Reverence for every breath, every lesson, every scar. Reverence for the nights you prayed and nothing changed except you. Reverence for the version of you that chose healing over hiding, growth over comfort, legacy over ego. You are not owed anything, and yet you've been given everything. And that's why you no longer chase, you channel. You don't try to prove your worth. You move like you know your worth. You speak from overflow. You walk in alignment. You show up not to be seen, but to serve. Because now you understand. Everything had to happen to bring you to this posture, this power, this knowing. You've stopped asking life to be easier. You've started asking yourself to be wiser. You don't just want what's shiny. You want what's sacred, and sacred things don't come cheap. They come through the fire. They come through obedience. They come through becoming someone who can carry what they prayed for. This is where the story turns. Not because the struggle ends, but because you no longer fear the struggle. You embrace it, because now you see, the pressure wasn't punishment. The pressure was placement. It was setting you up. It was clearing the room. It was cutting ties with who you thought you had to be, so you could finally rise as who you are. The world may not have clapped, but heaven did, and that applause, it echoes now in your boldness. In your discipline, in the quiet power of your daily choices. You're not who you were, and thank God for it. You're stronger, sharper, more dangerous to limitation than ever before. Not just because you've healed, but because you've hardened in all the right ways. Life didn't just build you. It branded you, not with scars of shame, but with proof of survival. You are the evidence that storms can birth strength, that fire can leave beauty behind, that when the earth shakes, some don't crumble, they rise higher. You've tasted pain, you've stared down doubt, you've stood in front of closed doors, broken hearts, and fading hope, and still. You chose to move forward. This isn't luck, this is legacy. Legacy isn't about fame. It's not about numbers or names on buildings or how loud the applause is. Legacy is what's left when the spotlight fades. It's how people feel after you've walked away. It's the ripple of your choices, the echo of your discipline, the torch you light that others carry forward, and now you carry the torch. Not because everything went right, but because everything went real. You learned how to lose without losing yourself. You learned how to bend without breaking your vision. You learned that destiny doesn't come in comfort, it comes in conviction. And your conviction is fire now. It's in the way you walk into a room and no longer shrink. It's in the way you speak, not to be liked, but to liberate. It's in the way you forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you refuse to stay chained to what tried to kill you. You are no longer bound to your old story. You've outgrown the version of you that needed permission to shine. Now, you own your light. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you build. You don't react, you respond with wisdom that came from wounds that didn't destroy you. And this is why it had to happen, because if it didn't fall apart, you would have never found the courage to rebuild stronger. If they didn't leave, you would have never discovered that you were the one you needed. If the door didn't close, you'd still be waiting for someone else to open it, not realizing you were born to build the next one. You thought it was breaking you, but it was building your blueprint. The very pain that tried to bury you became the soil your roots went deeper in. And now you are unshakable. Let them talk. Let the storms come. Let the winds change and the world shift and the silence stretch long. Because now you know who you are, you know whose you are, and you know what you carry. You carry fire, you carry wisdom, you carry stories that will unlock someone else's prison. You are no longer waiting to be saved, you have become the answer. And now the final truth, you're about to see why it had to happen, not just for you, but for them, for the ones watching, for the ones following your light in the dark, for the ones who will rise because you didn't quit. You went through it so the ones behind you don't have to break the same way. You overcame so others can overcome. That is the ultimate purpose. That is the reason it all had to happen, not for destruction, but for awakening, not for punishment, but for positioning, not for pain's sake, but for purpose. And now the world will see what heaven always knew. This is who you've been becoming all along.